Hey guys, I thought I would talk a little bit more about my cruise because I got so many questions from you guys. Thank you so much. Just over Instagram and over comments in my cruise log video that I posted, gosh, at this point, at least a few days ago. Anyway, I tried to answer them as they came, but I thought, you know what, I should probably just sit down and kind of talk about the pros and cons. I wanted to do this anyway. And I do want to preface all of this by saying this was the one and only cruise I had ever been on. It was on an Oceania cruise liner called the Vista. Oceania did sponsor some content over on Instagram and on TikTok. They did cover the cost of the cruise and of the excursions and things like that. They did not sponsor the vlog that I posted earlier, and they're not sponsoring this video either. So anyway, I just wanted to mention those things, especially that this was the one and only cruise I've ever been on. So I don't have a lot to compare it to necessarily, but I can give you my thoughts on this particular cruise. So some of the things I'm gonna say may become repetitive because I do have a pros and cons list and I do wanna answer some of your questions. So I'm gonna start with your questions first. One of you asked about onboard entertainment, were there shows and were there classes? Yes, there were a ton of classes, which I wasn't even aware of until maybe the second or third day. The ship was so big that I was just kind of exploring, and I think going on a cruise is very akin to watching like the second season of a show. They give you a little bit of information to kind of allow you to jump in, but they're not going to spoon feed you too much information so that it bores the majority of the people who are like cruisers, you know, people who go on cruises often. So it's not like they promoted a lot of these shows or classes. There were just sort of, you know, a few signs here and there. And unless you kind of like stopped to really read it, you would have no idea. So on the top deck of the ship, there was like a computer center, and then there was an artist loft, they called it. And so they had art classes and they had computer classes like all day long. So if you didn't do an excursion, if you don't feel like laying out by the pool, if there was a topic you really wanted to learn about, they had classes for you. It was actually pretty amazing. And then they had a trainer at the gym. I think they had demos on some things at the spa. So there was a lot of stuff going on. And then in terms of like full on entertainment, they had what I believe to be 2 shows every night. And they started pretty late, so I never caught them. But one show would generally be maybe like a singer would be featured. And then one maybe would be like dance, or there'd be 2 singers and they would be themed, but they weren't very long. I think they would go from like 9:30 to 10:15 and then 10:50 to 11, and then that was it. So those were the shows. I know on like the bigger cruise lines, they have like shows, like a whole play. They did not have those, not to my knowledge, they did not have those on Oceania. It was very like show light, just a little entertainment if you wanted it. But they had like a pretty nice like, you know, theater where they had, you know, seating and a nice stage. So there was definitely stuff to do, and all of these things were free. So you could just kind of like sign up and walk in. Okay, so the next question is, could you feel the waves? Say more about the motion sickness and all of that stuff. So as a little bit of background, if you've never heard me talk about this, I do suffer from motion sickness. I get motion sickness, trains, cars, planes, boats, anything, you name it, I get motion sick. And sometimes it will get so bad that it turns into vertigo or actually become sick. I won't go into too much detail. So I was very nervous about being on a boat. You know, what most people will tell you, like, oh, the boat's so big, you're not even gonna feel it, blah, 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 blah. I wasn't gonna take my chances. So I got one of those bracelets because it was highly recommended to me. But I got one of those bracelets that sends like an electronic pulse through your median nerve. And so it looks like an Apple Watch. It kind of has like a flat face to it, but you wear it on the inside here because that's where your median nerve is. It's the same concept as those bracelets people tell you to wear with the ball. That ball puts a pressure on the nerve and it like kind of activates it. I don't really know the science behind it, but it's supposed to stop you feeling nauseous. The name of it, it's an anti-nausea wristband, and that's how it's marketed. It's not marketed specifically to motion sickness because they do also recommend it for pregnant women who, you know, are experiencing morning sickness. So it's an anti-nausea wristband. So I believe it worked for me. I believe it worked for me because I could feel the waves, I could feel the movement, but I didn't feel sick. So it wasn't like it stopped motion for you. It's similar to like a painkiller. I don't know if you guys have ever taken like codeine or something. I remember taking codeine. It doesn't suit me. But I took codeine like once, I think, when I got a tooth pulled. And it's like you register that the pain is still there, but you just kind of don't care. It was kind of the same thing with this wristband. It was like, oh, I can feel the boat kind of back and forth, but I just don't feel sick. Or I would feel like a little dizzy, like my head would feel a little swimmy, but it wouldn't go so far as nausea, as like the feeling of like, oh God, I gotta lay down. It would just be like oh, here we are on a boat. And I think it's completely the wristband, because the first and the second day I was on the boat, I saw some people that were not well. You could tell they would be walking like almost diagonally, like leaning against the wall, trying to hold themselves up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think they have vertigo, because that's what happens. Like you can't like stay upright. I think the bracelet really, really helped. So if you watch my vlog, you know that I wore it as soon as I left here. I wore it on the plane. And my issue was I had the wristband on too tightly, and I kept it on basically for my entire travel between here and Rome, which was a very long time. And by the time I got to Rome and I took off the bracelet, I had a little bit of a rash. I showed it to you in the vlog. It looked like hives. It was a little bit itchy. It wasn't awful. I wasn't like, oh my God, I need to go to the doctor. It looked like it was irritated. So I thought, oh goodness, okay. So I wore it on my other wrist. I was like, let me keep playing around with this. I didn't put it on as tightly, and I kept turning it on and off. So I kept it on, but you can turn it off in terms of like it actually emitting the electronic pulse. So I would turn it on if I knew I was getting into a van. I turned it on when I first got onto the boat. I didn't need to turn it on afterwards, which I'll talk about. But I would kind of just like cycle it, and I didn't have any problems on this wrist. So I think it was a matter of it just constantly being on, and I did have it on really tight. I just wanted to make sure it was working. So I loosened it up, and I turned it on and off, and that did the trick. That did the trick. So I did not have a rash or anything on the second wrist that I wore it on. So what I will say is that whole, I don't even know what the entire phrase is, but like, you got to get your sea legs, or I finally got my sea legs, like that whole thing. They're not kidding. When I first got onto the boat, it's rocking ever so gently. And it was hard. It was hard for me to just walk straight down the hallway to our room. It was like, whoa, you just feel like if you've ever been in an earthquake, like all of a sudden, like you lose your footing. And then like somewhere in day 2, it was fine. It was like you could tell that the boat was rocking, but you would get your sea legs, and it was totally fine. So, I'm hesitant to say if you get motion sickness, just get the bracelet, go on a cruise, you'll be fine. Because my issue with the cruise is you're stuck. You're stuck on the boat unless you don't mind cutting your cruise short and just getting off at the next port and just leaving. It's one of those like you're kind of held captive. So if you're really curious about a cruise, I would book one like the Mediterranean. I think was great. I hear the ones in like the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean, those are much rockier. The waves are much bigger, can be much bigger. So you want to find like calm waters. Just find a short one. Maybe 2 nights. I don't know if they have those, but like a really short cruise. Sometimes they have those like cruises to nowhere where you can get on the boat, it just kind of sails out, and then it just sails right back in. I know they do those in New York. It's like 1 or 2 nights, like it's like for a weekend. So maybe do that just to try it out first. Like get the bracelet, put it on, try it out or whatever, because I would not recommend, like I think I was lucky. I was definitely very lucky to be okay the entire trip. I do think it was the bracelet, but if for whatever reason the bracelet doesn't work for you, you're kind of like shit out of luck. The bracelet, it emits that electronic pulse. There's all this information on the bracelet that you can read up on, but you will feel a tingling in your hand. And at first it is very distracting because it almost feels like your hand is asleep, but you get used to it. You get used to it, and that is much more tolerable than motion sickness. So I was okay with that. So anyway, I hope that answers all of the motion sickness questions. By the end of the trip, and I mentioned this in the vlog too, but by the end of the trip, I think the soft rocking of the sea really put my husband and I to sleep. Like, we slept very heavily on the boat. Like, the last week we were on the boat, we were like out. Like, he doesn't snore. He was snoring. I was probably snoring. It was actually like, it flipped. Like, not only did I get over the motion sickness, not only did I get used to it, but I think I really came to enjoy it. So you never know. So another question was, are the excursions extra money? And yes, so I didn't save all the information. There was so much paperwork. I didn't save all the information, but I do have like my statement, my bill here. And the excursions, it depends obviously on what excursion you go on. And I don't think all the excursions have a fee. I picked some like Oceania Select ones and exclusive Oceania ones. Those are the ones with like the lunch that was included, the walk through the vineyard, that sort of thing. Those definitely had a cost to them. It was maybe, all of those were less than like $200 a person, like far less than $200 a person. And then there were some that were just like $69. But there are excursions that you can select that are free. So those are probably just like the walking tours or whatever. But like usually if there's like an entrance fee to something or whatever, they'll just put it into the charge of the excursion so that you don't have to actually exchange any money when you're on one of these excursions. Like, you have the tour guide and, you know, those big tour groups that just like walk through, you'll be part of like one of those groups. And so you don't have to actually make any exchanges or do any transactions or whatever. So it does make it easy. But yeah, so yes and no in terms of cost. What was security like? So at the docks, every time you docked, you had to show your passport. And Oceania has a card for you. It's the card that lets you into your room. It's the card, let's say if you bought like an alcohol package and you order alcohol at dinner, they're gonna ask you for your card. It's also the card that you use to get off and get on the boat. So that's how they count attendance. So every time you get off the boat, you have to ding it. And every time you get back on, you have to ding it. And on the boat or on the dock, like the country will do this, there is security. There is like, they'll check your bags and stuff like that. I would say it's much lighter than security at an airport. So there's the metal detector and then there's the conveyor belt that you can put your bags through or whatever. But it's not like they're looking for liquids or anything like that. I think they're really just looking for, you know, metals and things like that, and weapons and that sort of thing. So there is security, but it's light compared to an airport. Am I happy with what I packed? I am actually. I thought I packed way too much, and I could have packed less. Like, let's not get it twisted. I could have packed less. You guys saw how much I packed. I could have packed less. However, I wore a lot of different things, and it was what I expected. Like, when we woke up and went to breakfast, I just kind of, I don't know, fancied up my pajamas basically, maybe changed my bottoms, threw on a sweatshirt or whatever. Then we would come back to the room and then change for the excursion. And then after the excursion, I would change for dinner or, you know, the rest of the day or whatever. I did go to the gym for the days or the longer afternoons where we had shorter excursions and we were just sort of walking around the boat. I would have an outfit for that. It just felt right. And then maybe I would change into something a little bit nicer for dinner. So I did go through quite a bit of clothing. And the only reason why I say I really could have packed a lot less is that there was laundry. And this was something my husband and I kind of debated about because we watched an info video on the cruise liner that we were going to be on YouTube. And I saw that there was laundry, but I thought that just the laundry room was for like the suites, like the fancier rooms. And my husband was like, no, he's like, I think they're on every deck. And I was like, no way, they're not gonna have free laundry on every deck. Well, they had free laundry on every deck. So I didn't need to bring like 20 pairs of underwear, 15 bras, like, you know, 3 workout outfits. I really could have pared all of that down. And I could have also pared down, you know, all of my more casual clothing. I didn't need multiples. But I am very happy with what I packed. The only thing I think I missed was more layers because it wasn't hot. It wasn't hot at all. I mean, maybe when it was really sunny out at the peak of the afternoon, if I was laying out by the pool, yes, that's hot. That would be hot. But for the most part, it would just, the high was like 70, 75. There was a nice breeze. Like it just, I don't, maybe it was a little bit muggy. I could have used more layers. So if anything, I would have brought more sweatshirt hoodies. I just had that one zip up one, and then I had my windbreakers, but I needed kind of something like in between. So anyway, that's just one thing I would have brought, but it's not like, you know, I was uncomfortable at any point. Would you go on another cruise? I would. I would definitely go on another cruise. I don't think I would go on a cruise with quite as many ports as there were, because it was too fast. I like kind of spending my time in cities and getting to know a place. And, you know, it's only been a little bit over a week since I've been back, and I already have some of the places confused. You know, I was actually asking my husband last night, I was like, which country were we in where we had the gelato? And he was like, which gelato? Because that happened more than once. And I was like, oh, you know, this one, it was this store. And he was like, oh, that was Corfu. And I was like, oh, right. You know, so it starts to get really jumbled. And I don't like that. I would like to, like, I don't need to see places. You know what I mean? I don't mind going to a place and spending like 2 weeks there. That's kind of like my ideal way to travel. So that was definitely like a con for me, and probably why I'm not gonna cruise a lot. But I do think, now having experienced it, that there are situations where I think a cruise would be really, really great. I was thinking, oh, that's why they have so many cruises up to Alaska, because you really want to see the shoreline, and you really want to like get off and like check out all of these little spots, you know, along Alaska, and not necessarily like drive through there. You know what I mean? Like it's just easier probably to just go to move along in the water. So that I think I would probably do, or something that you want to definitely see from the water. And I realized this when we started to come into the port at Montenegro, because the mountains are so beautiful. I had always thought about taking like a river cruise through the fjords in Scandinavia. And I think that makes sense, right? Because you want to be in the water to appreciate these fjords. So, you know, it's those instances that I think I would want to take a cruise, but I don't think I want to like see as much of Europe as possible on a cruise liner. That's not my thing. It was just too fast. So I would go on another one, but I probably would go on a different kind of cruise. And then, overall pros and cons. Okay, so let's go into my pros and cons. So pros, like I was just saying, it is a very efficient way of traveling. If you do want to just hit a bunch of different places, I think it's probably the best way to do it. I think it probably is the most efficient way to do it, because you only have to pack and unpack once, right? You just settle into your room and just on and off you go. So I do think it's really, really efficient. Another pro is, well, and this could be kind of considered a con, is the all-inclusivity. Now, I've never been on an all-inclusive trip. I've never been on a cruise. I've never gone to one of those resorts where it's all-inclusive. So it takes a little getting used to, like, to get into that mentality. And then it's like, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. And we really started to then explore and appreciate all the little spots and nooks on the ship, because they had, you know, coffee bars, they had little dessert places, they had a place where they had afternoon tea, which was awesome. You know, the buffet was open like pretty much all afternoon, and then you could go over to the grill where they have, you know, sandwiches. So it was like you could kind of keep moving and keep eating, which is not great for the waistline, but it's really, I mean, like, talk about being able to get into the headspace of a vacation. Because you don't have to sign anything. You don't have to like think about it. Like, that place looks a little too expensive. You don't have to think about it. It's all just there. It's almost like you're just dining at a friend's house. So it's really interesting. The all-inclusive thing is like really, really, like I said, it's like amazing and really dangerous all at the same time. So I put that under pros, because I do think it's pretty cool. Another pro is you just have beautiful views all the time. All the time, no matter where you are on the boat, you look out and it's like, oh, you can see an island, or it's just all water, or the most incredible sunrise, or the most incredible sunset. Like at every moment there was a beautiful view. And I've had plenty of really crappy views staying in different hotels and different cities. Many times in New York, you can probably get a hotel room facing an alley, a wall, something, nothing, facing nothing. So anyway, I love the idea that you had a beautiful view all the time. Oh, I mentioned this already, but you only have to unpack and pack once. I mean, who doesn't love that? So, so great. I think there was something for everyone. And again, I can only speak about my particular experience at Oceania, but I can imagine that cruise lines really, they want to cater to a lot of different people because they don't know who they're getting on board. But there's something for everyone. So in Oceania, the Vista at least, there's 4 fine dining restaurants. You have to make reservations, and you can only make one reservation at each of those. So you can only go to, each one once, basically. And then they had the dining room, the buffet, the grill, and then all the other nooks. You could go at any time while they were open, but you could go anytime, as often as you want, stay as long as you want, and whenever, no reservations needed. Their grand dining room was beautiful, and that's the one that was open for breakfast and for dinner. The menu changed, and again, there was something for everyone. The menu was so diverse. And then they just had like just a little bit of everything at the buffet, and at the grill was just like the perfect mood for like kind of like beachside, poolside dining, like sandwiches and fries, pizza or whatever. They had the best pizza, the absolute best pizza. I mentioned this on the vlog. We actually ended up going there 2 or 3 times for pizza. Anyway, that was incredible. And then again, I can only speak for Oceania, but we just had the basic room. It's called the veranda stateroom. So every room has a veranda, has a little balcony. And it was great, and that's one thing I'd always heard about cruises, like the rooms are so small, like you feel so cramped. And so I was kind of mentally prepared for that. I'm like, of course, you're on a boat. But our room was great. It was like a nice hotel room. The bathroom was especially roomy. The shower was fantastic. Water pressure was great. Sink with this like beautiful vanity. So if you see any movement behind me, the gentleman that maintains our pool is here, so don't be alarmed. Yeah, so our room was just fantastic. So that's a pro that I can say for Oceania. I was just really impressed. And the decor, just all over the ship, I'll say, was modern. It was really beautiful. The ship that I was on, I believe, was built in 2023. So it is relatively new, and so I wouldn't really expect much less. But it was very modern. It was really beautiful, very well maintained, very well designed. And yeah, I was really happy with that. Really, really happy with that. Okay, so the cons. The possible motion sickness. I think we've talked that one to death, so I'll move on. Not much time at each port. I just mentioned that. It was really quick. Even my longer excursions, my 2 longest excursions were Amalfi and Sicily. I think one was like 6.5 hours and one was 8 hours. And even that didn't feel like enough time. It was like, I wanted to stay. I wanted to kind of continue absorbing what was going on. And it just wasn't enough. If you don't need that, if you want to just like check out a few things, cross it off your list, then it's perfect for you. But if you like to really kind of immerse yourself, it's not for you. I also want to say that, and I want to be sensitive about this because I don't mean offense by this at all. I'm not meaning to offend anyone, but I'm not sure if cruises in general, again, this was the only one I've been on, so it's the only one I could speak to. I'm not sure if it's for my demographic. Yes, there were a few couples there that were the same age as my husband and I, but most of the people, the majority of the people were much older. So I think it's really geared towards an older crowd, which is fine. I think cruises are spectacular if you are older, maybe have some mobility issues, maybe just like cruising around, or you like the all-inclusive thing. It really is a very nice, easy way to travel. It is much gentler than like plane travel for sure. And Oceania, and again, I imagine most cruise lines are like this. I can only speak to Oceania, but they just take care of everything for you at every single port we were at. Whenever we disembarked, there was an info table there were shuttle buses, signs, like everything is laid out for you. So you don't have to think much. You can really just sort of check out, and they're very, very helpful. Everyone that I came across on the boat was very, very helpful, very friendly, very helpful. Yeah, I don't even know if that's a con. It's just something I wanted to mention and I just put under the cons list. So not sure if it's for my demographic. Oh, this is what I wanted to say. I think also a con for me is that you'll really benefit from the all inclusion if you drink alcohol. Now they have different packages, and so if you like to throw back when you're on vacation, then I think a cruise is for you. You can buy, I think, like a wine and beer package. Sorry, I didn't really look into it because I don't drink, but I think there's a wine and beer package, and then there's a package that includes like everything, like hard cocktails, hard liquor. And they may seem expensive, but if you think about how long the cruise is, and that you can drink as much as you want all the time, it really is very, very cost effective. So I think it's great if you're a drinker, but for me personally, it was kind of a con because I couldn't take advantage of that. And I think that that's one of the big reason why people love cruising. So I couldn't really appreciate it for that. And then Wi-Fi. This is not an Oceania thing. As far as I can tell, this is just cruises in general. If you just get normal basic Wi-Fi, it is terrible. It's like, don't even bother. And I know, when you're on vacation, you should unplug, you should disconnect anyway. But I like to work, and I needed to work. So I had to upgrade to the premium Wi-Fi, which then was great, but you could only have one device connected at a time. So between my laptop, my iPhone, and my iPad, I was constantly logging into one, disconnecting the other one, logging into one, disconnecting the other one. And then I ended up with this schedule where in the mornings I was on my phone, at night I was on my iPad, and then during the day I was on my laptop. And so it was just kind of annoying. And I thought, gosh, in this day and age, with the things that we've got going on, I'm like, why isn't Wi-Fi better? And I thought, if there's a cruise line that comes out and really promotes free, amazing Wi-Fi, I think they may get a lot of, I don't know, am I the only one? I just think it's so important, I just think everyone's on their phone all the time. So anyway, that was definitely one con. I thought it was one con. And then these were kind of Oceania specific, but again, because this was my only cruise, I'm not sure. The pools seemed a little small. I vlogged it, so you guys tell me, is that just a typical pool size? It seemed a little bit small, and I will say this because some of you asked, I did not go to the pool. Because of all the excursions, we had an excursion every day except for the last day because it was rainy and I wanted to pack or whatever. There wasn't time to go to the pool, because even if we did a short excursion, I think the shortest one was 2.5 hours, the whole thing would be 3.5 hours total, between lining up to go, actually getting back on board and whatever. And you would leave, after breakfast or whatever. You come back and you'd have lunch, and then sometimes we would nap, sometimes we would, let's sit and have some coffee, whatever. And then it was so we there just wasn't that much time for us to enjoy the pool. Anyway, with that being said, it looked like the pool was just a little bit too small. There was plenty of area around the pool to lounge or whatever, but the pool itself was a little bit small. And again, you guys tell me if I'm off, if that's you're on a boat, Michelle, how big do you think a pool can be? I mean, there's also that. And then again, this is Oceania specific. I felt like the gym was a little bit small. I felt like the gym was a little bit small because on the days that it was busy, it was I was kind of stepping over people and moving around and almost got hit by someone. So, and all the treadmills were full. So I do think they should expand that a little bit. I know it's not that full all the time, but I just don't think there should be any moment on vacation on a cruise where if you want to work out, you can't because it's too full. And there was at some point, a few times I went, if you just wanted to walk on the treadmill, you couldn't because they were full. So just a little feedback. We did get a couples massage and it was fine, but it was just fine. It was not great. The spa was not fantastic. I don't think if you go on, at least on the Oceania Vista, I wouldn't use the spa. I just don't think it's worth it. And then that is it, I think. So I did save all of my stories that I was kind of creating on the go on Instagram as a highlight. So I have an Oceania Cruises highlight on Instagram. So if you click there, you'll see like all the food or whatever. So when I'm like filming for Instagram and TikTok and for my vlog, I've got to film stuff this way and then I have to film stuff this way. So sometimes I was doing this and then I would forget to do this. So you may see some things in my Instagram stories that you didn't see in my vlog. So definitely check it out if you are interested. But that's it. Those are my thoughts on the cruise. I hope I didn't miss anything. There's just so many, so many thoughts. And I'll just show this to you, but I'll put this down below in the description box. But this is the specific cruise that I went on. So it was the Cradle of Ancients. And those were all the stops that we made. That's a list of the cities and ports that we stopped at. So we got around. We made it all the way around Italy. And, all in all, I think it was great. I think it was such a fun experience. It was very, very different from anything I'd ever done. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And it was a lot of fun, like prepping for it and the anticipation of it and everything. And it was a lot of fun. I hope that answered all of your questions. If you have more questions, leave them down below. I'll try and, answer them as quickly as possible. But that's it. Thank you guys so much. And thank you so much for all the love on the cruise vlog. I got a lot of views and some really, really nice comments. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in my next video.